Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the CrossCat webinar series on leveraging digital vision technology for enterprise and industrial applications. My name is Pierluigi Buonicore. I'm the Global Director for Advanced Technology, and I will be moderating today's session. And I also have on the line my colleague Sean Fan, Global Trade Director for Industrial Technology and Advanced Manufacturing. We are going to start the session soon. Our guest speaker today is Rodney McAfee, Vice President, Energy and Industrial Engineering at Kognitiv Spark, who will provide us an overview of the remote inspection and operation solutions using mixed reality. Over to you, Rodney.
Thank you, Pierluigi. So yes, today I'm going to provide a quick overview of Kognitiv Spark and the solution that we've developed that's called RemoteSpark. So we are a software company that has created a remote worker support solution for use on the Microsoft HoloLens. It takes advantage of the full 3D immersive capabilities of mixed reality. Next slide, please. Now, we're a bit different from most software companies as we have in-house technical expertise in many different sectors. For instance, I myself am a professional engineer with over 25 years experience practicing primarily in the oil and gas, mining, energy, and construction sectors. So we bring that to the table when we have discussions with clients. And it really helps us understand your use case scenario and help ensure that our solution is a really good fit for your needs. Next slide, please. So I'd like to just kind of set the scene and want to briefly discuss a few of the industry challenges. And they have to do with the fact that the workforce is typically geographically dispersed, so people are located all over the place. Work is less repetitive, it's variable and more complex now. We have aging frontline workers, so we have people that are getting close to retirement, and there's a risk that there's unwritten knowledge that might be lost as they disappear from the workforce. And workers require just in time, just enough information to be as efficient as they can be when completing their task. And it's very important to share knowledge while reducing physical interaction and travel, in particular during the current pandemic situation. Next slide, please. So the problem that we solve is remote worker support. So it's about connecting and supporting with those workers when they need the information and providing them the information in the most effective way when they need it, where they need it, and how they need it. And this is a really good option, as I mentioned, during travel restrictions. So instead of having to send perhaps an expert to site to troubleshoot a problem, instead they can do it remotely, and they can guide the worker who's on site in front of the piece of equipment that's having issues or whatever the case may be, and eliminate the need to travel. And it's not just eliminating the need to travel, it's also eliminating the delay associated with that expert having to travel. And typically that's a greater return on the investment for everybody involved when you can minimize that. So why is this important? I mean, it's about enhancing the overall quality of technical troubleshooting. And it's about making sure that tasks are completed correctly on the first attempt. And like I said, decreasing delays due to equipment downtime. That is by far the biggest cost savings when we're looking at what our clients are doing with our solution. And what we're seeing kind of in a broad general sense is we're seeing for our client usage, maybe up to a 60% reduction in expert travel by using the remote worker support solution. So, maybe not every situation can be resolved remotely, but a vast majority of them can be. And if nothing else, you've pre-qualified that the expert does need to go to site by doing it remotely initially. It also addresses the lack of skilled technical workers. Like I mentioned in the previous slide about the aging workforce, it's effectively on-the-job training. So when a worker encounters a problem they don't understand, they connect with the right person that can give them the guidance, and that guidance is effectively on-the-job training. And it also, if you kind of flip it around, it decreases the need for service calls from OEM suppliers. So maybe it's not the expertise within your organization, maybe it's the expertise within your original equipment manufacturer suppliers, So instead of having them to send a service technician to your site, perhaps they can troubleshoot your issues remotely as well. Next slide, please. So the core capabilities of our solution, the solution is called RemoteSpark, are the hands-free point of view video with shared audio. And the foundation of this feature is very low bandwidth connectivity required and very high level of security. So you can ensure from your organization's perspective that the data isn't being seen by somebody else or somebody else tapping into that video feed. The basic functionality is you can, first off, see what the person sees, but you can also capture images and annotate those images so the expert can convey more detail about what they're looking at or how they're trying to direct that remote worker. Sharing simple files or even a screen sharing capability. So maybe there's an application on your computer, you're the expert, and if only that remote worker could see it, well, they can with simply sharing your screen. And the files that you can simply share are like PDFs, Word files, Excel, PowerPoint, anything like that. And that's simply with a drag and drop. But the more advanced features of our solution go beyond the simple remote worker support via video, and they leverage what the Microsoft HoloLens has to offer. And that is the ability to look at three-dimensional holograms with animations, the ability to display live IoT data. So if there's equipment with sensors, and it would be useful for that worker to see what that sensor is showing in real time while they're standing in front of the equipment or while they're working on it, it can show that information. Enterprise hologram galleries is a very easy and convenient way to preload effectively folders with assets, digital assets that the remote worker would benefit from. So, think maybe a service manual or a 17-step procedure on how to complete a complex task, or even a stepped animation that's a three-dimensional hologram. That can all be there at the worker's fingertips so that they can start with that, and then if they need to connect to the expert, they can. We also have the ability for the software to recognize the piece of equipment you're working on through object recognition, leveraging artificial intelligence, and integration with ERP systems, which kind of go hand in hand. I'm going to talk more about the ERP system in a moment, so I'll just kind of park that. And I'm going to talk more about the 3D holograms with animations as well. And I just want to say that the Microsoft HoloLens is the hardware that we use, and it is designed for industrial applications. It's safety glass rated, has a dust rating, drop protection. You can attach it to a hard hat, and it comes with communication systems with the microphones and the speakers so that you can work in very noisy environments. And it's also intrinsically safe to be used in explosive gas environments. Next slide, please. So I want to talk first about the digital twins for the kind of the advanced feature capabilities of the software. So, where's the real value of being able to see a digital twin or specifically a three-dimensional animated hologram? Well, I mean, it's about having a representation of that physical asset. So you're standing in front of a piece of equipment, and you can bring up a digital version of it. The digital version would have been originally built from a three-dimensional CAD model, or maybe two-dimensional, but the three-dimensional is becoming more and more common. But then it's tied together with real-time data, and that's where the being able to visualize live IoT data really comes in. But the real goal of looking at these models is to provide a much deeper insight into, maybe it's a critical operation, or it's about how to carry out a very complex task associated with that piece of equipment. And that's where we start talking about the stepped animations. So where people say a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000 pictures, I would argue that a three-dimensional hologram with stepped animation is worth 1,000 videos, because it shows you in a very comprehensive way how to do what it is you need to do. So if you're that remote worker on the front line, you're in front of a big piece of equipment that you have to disassemble it, make some repairs, and put it back together, the step-by-step animation is very impactful because it's three-dimensional. You can walk around it. There's no interpretation required. You can position it where you need it, and that can help guide the task. And remember, the expert is likely still connected and watching over your shoulder during the whole process to make sure that every step you carry out is being done correctly. So it kind of, in encapsulation, digital twins are about integration of all the various data sources you have for that particular piece of equipment. The intelligence is about having it connected to various analytical platforms. So maybe it's predicting when it needs work. It's also about interaction. So, for that remote worker, they can interact with it, but it's also interacting from a predictive maintenance perspective as well. Next slide, please. And when I talk about ERP integration, so that's enterprise resource planning, or even sometimes called EIM, enterprise information management. So it's all of your information in your organization, where you keep it, and where you keep it in a way that you can access it. Our solution can tap into that. 80% of workers have no desk, which means they're walking around on a plant floor or a shop floor or a mine site or wherever they are. And if you can get them that information quicker and easier when they need it, they can be more efficient and effective in carrying out their work. So it's really about the data and the information being available for that worker, and in a way that they can easily visualize it or interact with it or use it in a collaborative way when they're getting that expert support. So it's really about coupling that object recognition with the ERP integration, so that when you look at the piece of equipment, it knows that you're looking at a particular pump in a particular building or whatever the piece of equipment may be. And it knows that there's a work order available for that. It will ask you if you want to review the previous maintenance records or the service manuals, or call up a stepped animation to show how to complete that task. It's about providing all the information that remote worker needs in a very quick and concise way. Next slide, please. So what makes our solution unique? Low bandwidth. It operates at only 256 kilobit per second. It's all it's required, which means you can do that with a cellular device, a mobile hotspot. So you don't need to have high-speed internet. The full 3D immersive view is available during the call, which is everything I just talked about the 3D animations being a useful way to guide very complex tasks. We do have an on-premise option as well. By default, our solution is cloud-based. But if for those who are in industries where that's just not an option to be able to connect to the internet, we have on-premise solutions so that it can be completely within your organization as well. And the value of a connected worker is really about giving workers the right information or access to the experts quickly when they need it, and in a way that they can use it very quickly. And in terms of ROI, I've already kind of mentioned that we're seeing, based on client feedback, around 60% of expert travel being eliminated. But the biggest savings that I'll reiterate comes with reducing equipment downtime. We have situations where clients were, typically experiencing maybe a 3-day delay before experts could get to site, and now they're resolving the problems quickly in sometimes well less than an hour, which is the biggest cost savings, because depending on the industry, you're looking at millions of dollars a day potentially if the facility is down. And I mentioned earlier about eliminating service calls. We had a client recently that, as they told us, it eliminated a 2-week delay. And I'll talk more about that in a second with the use case. Next slide, please. So I've got 3 really quick use case scenarios, or case studies, just to kind of touch on to give you a sense on the type of things our clients are doing. The first one is an oil and gas client located in Western Canada. And it was about getting that expert support from the office to the field. And they were looking at sites where they would typically have to have between 14 and 20 hours of travel time to get to the site. And they measured the metric over a 6-month period and observed over a 60% reduction in the travel required. And they were resolving most issues with a 20 to 30-minute phone call over RemoteSpark. And in that industry, in oil and gas, if the site was completely down, you're looking at over $1 million a day in lost revenue. So the direct cost savings are significant, but the more impressive savings have to do with minimizing downtime. Next slide, please. So the next example is from the manufacturing sector. Here's a slide. It's from the manufacturing sector, and this is a client of ours in the southern US, and it's about supporting equipment repairs, and it really had to do with their OEM suppliers. So in this case, they were, the very first week they deployed RemoteSpark, they had an issue where two pieces of equipment separately went down on different days. Both required call outs to OEM suppliers in different locations. And due to travel restrictions, they would have been waiting more than 2 weeks for the calls to be dealt with. And the direct charge for having the OEM supplier send a service technician was in the range of $15,000. And the downtime for their process was huge. The number they quoted was $22,000 a minute if they were fully down. And instead, they used our solution and were able to resolve the issue in less than an hour. And that included reaching out to the OEM supplier for the very first time and asking them if they were willing to utilize this application called RemoteSpark and getting them to download the app, log in, and connect. So the whole process was very quick and seamless. Next slide, please. The third and final use case scenario I'll touch upon is a heavy industrial one. This particular client focuses on fixing and repairing pumps, compressors, electrical motors. And this particular example I'll talk about is them working for a mining client in Northern Canada. And the direct cost savings were $7,000 for every use, because more often than not, they were having to charter a flight to get to the site because they simply could not wait for a commercial flight. It was so important to get the problem resolved as quick as possible. And they were able to resolve the issues with the expert connecting remotely in typically less than 30 minutes. When what used to be a 3 to 17 hour delay, depending on how quick they could get mobilized and get that chartered flight arranged to get mobilized to site. So a tremendous cost savings from that perspective. Next slide, please. So the next slide is about successful pilot projects. And I have this slide because I think this is important. It's one of the key differentiators of our company compared to just a regular software company. When we started, we were more like the regular software company. We sold software and tried to give you as much information as possible, but you were kind of on your own. We were hoping for the best. But we quickly realized this is a newer technology, in particular if you're leveraging the mixed reality or extended reality capabilities. So it's kind of new to your organization. And there was a lot of lessons learned at the start from deployments that didn't go as well. So we want to bring those lessons learned to all clients. So we stress a partnership right from the beginning. And it's important for us to make sure that everybody understands the objectives and goals. The use case scenario or the use case that we're doing from RemoteSpark at the start is a really good fit. It's targeted and repeatable. And we like to have kind of a staged approach to the pilots so that we can make sure that you're achieve as much success as early as possible, because that's beneficial for both parties. Next slide, please. So in summary, I just want to kind of touch upon what makes RemoteSpark different, what makes us the superior offering. And it really has to do with that low bandwidth and security being the first and foremost issues. Like I mentioned, only 256 kilobit per second required, so you can use a mobile hotspot. So people can be mobile, they can be out in the field somewhere, they can be at remote locations or factories that just simply do not have good Wi-Fi connectivity. The industrial grade security, some of our biggest clients are military. So I mean, we have security first and foremost as one of our top priorities. The 3D immersive view, I can't stress that enough. There's so much more you can do beyond just the video call or just file sharing. And we really leverage that with the animated holograms, taking your 3D CAD assets and utilize them to the fullest. And I mentioned the on-premise solution. This is exclusive. Nobody else has this option. And we have clients that do require that. Think defense sector, nuclear. It's just not an option to touch the public internet. So our solution will work in closed environments like that. And that in-house industrial expertise, it really sets us apart and makes us a lot different from other software offerings. I come from the industrial space, so I know the industrial space. So when I'm working with you, I can help. And that's really the message there. Next slide, please. So I hope this presentation provided a good overview of our solution, RemoteSpark, and how it could help you. So now I'll turn it back over to Pierluigi to coordinate the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodney. And we can open the Q&A session right now. We have already a few questions from the attendees, and we also have Patrick Lahaye from from Kognitiv Spark as well that will eventually also be available for answering some questions. So the first question that I got is kind of actually similar to what you just mentioned in your presentation, Rodney. It's about how do you deal with the internet connectivity when a Wi-Fi connection is not available? Since you mentioned that you can have, of course, low bandwidth, but just wondering maybe how do you have a backup solution, or what do you do when Wi-Fi is not available?
Yeah, so like I said, probably half of our clients use a mobile hotspot for their connection, and that gives them the freedom to be anywhere at their site. But we do have clients that will install additional, repeaters or leaky feeder line type internet connections within their facility. But we also, you can have a dedicated mobile hotspot as well. So it doesn't have to be your mobile device, like your smartphone. You can actually purchase these mobile hotspots, and they work surprisingly well, but mainly because we don't need high bandwidth. We only need a low bandwidth connection.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. The next question, since we're still talking about connectivity, can you connect with people outside of your organization once the device is on?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because some of the other solutions on the market, you may not realize it, but when you install them, you can then only connect like experts, remote workers with people within your organization. So, if you're a company ABC corporation and you have 1,000 employees, those are the only people you can connect to in a lot of situations, because it only works on your domain. Whereas our solution is designed to allow you to connect to anybody, anywhere in the world. So if you, the really best example is, my company buys equipment from some other company to do what we need to do. So that's our original equipment supplier or OEM supplier. And I need to reach out to them to troubleshoot issues. Well, they're not in my organization. So with other solutions, you wouldn't be able to do that, but ours you can. They just simply download the application. It's free from the Microsoft Store for any expert. The purchasing of our solution is only for the remote worker side of the equation, so the person with the HoloLens. So because the other part's free, that means you can reach out to anybody on literally a moment's notice and say, hey, I need help from you. Can you download this app that's freely available on the Microsoft Store, log into it, we'll connect, and then we can do a call, and you'll be able to see what I see. So that's really the power of that.
Great. Thank you so much for answering the question. The next question actually is it's a two-step question. So the question is, what are the most common use cases scenarios for your solutions? And specifically, there was also interest around if you have any use case in the offshore oil and gas area.
Okay, yeah, so the first part, so the common use cases are connecting with that remote worker. So it's an expert maybe back in your office or elsewhere. We are very geographically diverse now. A lot of organizations have multiple office locations, and the expertise may not be uniform from location to location. So you have experts in this subject in that location and various in other locations. So it allows you to quickly connect with people. So that's the primary use case. The flip side, like I said, for reaching out to your OEM supplier, that's another use case. Factory acceptance testing, that's one where you might travel to a facility to look at the equipment before you purchase it. Now that can be done remotely. Another use case may be that you sell equipment, and instead of just selling the equipment and with maybe a paper copy of the user manual, you could include a HoloLens with RemoteSpark on it, and that goes with the equipment. And as part of the initial onboarding, you train your client how to use that software, and then they could then use it to reach back out to you for you to troubleshoot any issues. So those are the kind of the four top targeted use cases. And in terms of offshore, we're working on that right now on a project we're doing here in Eastern Canada for offshore platforms and offshore vessels. The obstacle is really internet connectivity. You have to rely on a satellite-based system, and you can get the bandwidth usually, but there can be issues around latency. And when you're talking about a video feed communication type system, latency can become a problem because the video feed becomes very broken. But this project we're doing right now is trying to address that coupled with the fact there are new technologies coming on the market very soon that might be drastically improving satellite internet feeds that are available to the common public.
Yes, like the low orbit satellite
Absolutely.
constellation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you for answering that question. On the same line, on the same area, the question was about whether or not you can complete calls in loud industrial settings. Since going in a factory or going in some of these industrial settings can be quite noisy, how would you be able to use your headset in those environments?
Yeah, we did some testing on that recently, and we do have a bunch of clients using it, and we've been getting good feedback, but we wanted to kind of really know for ourselves. So we did some controlled tests that were at 100 decibels, 105, 110, 115 decibels. So very loud, noisy environments. And what we found was we were blown away. And it really has to do with the noise canceling technology that's available these days. And that's built into the HoloLens. But it's a third-party solution that we use for getting the sound into the remote workers' ears, basically. And we've been using bone conductive headsets. So there's actually no audio going into your ear. It's a vibration behind the ear. I suppose it's similar to how a hearing aid would work. But it's amazing how it allows you to hear somebody very clearly talking to you while you're standing in a very noisy environment. And they hear you as well very easily without hearing all that ambient surrounding noise.
Yes, yes. Thank you for answering that question. One question from the audience is also if you can elaborate, who would be your main competitor, especially in the US, where there is other technology that may be similar to yours?
Well, the main competitor would be a solution on the RealWear device. And now RealWear device is a different piece of hardware compared to the Microsoft HoloLens. It is primarily just that point of view video feed. And admittedly, there are situations where maybe that's what all people need. But we try to really emphasize the value added of taking it to the next step to the mixed reality. But having said that, we're also in the advanced stages of considering whether we want to put RemoteSpark on RealWear as well. So that competitor may disappear and may become an ally real soon as well.
I see. Yeah, because honestly, yours is more of a platform, and hardware, it's really just a way of delivering your platform. So,
right.
To your point, yes. Thank you for answering the question. Since we're talking about platforms, actually, one question that I can see very interesting is if organizations, once they deploy your solution, do they have to have a Microsoft Azure cloud subscription?
No, they don't. Like by default, we use Microsoft Azure, but that's built into the subscription. So you don't even have to know anything about it. You don't have to have it within your organization. You don't manage it. You don't do any of that. So it's a very simple, I hate to use the word, but almost like plug and play type solution. You get it out of the box, you launch it up, you connect it to a viable internet, whether it's in your organization or a public Wi-Fi, wherever, and it'll work.
Yes, got it. You mentioned basically you shown some examples on deployment of your solution, and specifically in some of the environments when perhaps there might be need for C1 D1 certification, and Microsoft HoloLens it's not C1 D1 certified. Just wondering, the question is why was this not a concern? When this deployment was made in that specific client, didn't require this as part of their basic requirements?
Yeah, so the HoloLens is C1D2 certified for intrinsically safe if it's packaged with the Trimble headset type arrangement. Now we'll get into that, but suffice say you can get the hardware in a C1D2. We do have situations where clients do require the C1D1. The workaround has been when they still felt they had to use our solution because they needed the mixed reality component, they did a simple hot work permit, which are commonly used and deployed in industry where explosive gas environments are an issue. And that allowed them to then use the HoloLens in that environment. But of course, that's kind of the mention of RealWear as something we're looking at, because RealWear has a device that's available as C1D1, which allows you to be in the more stringent explosive gas type situations.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rodney. We will have a couple more questions, and then we'll get towards the end. The next question is, how complicated is the integration for IoT-enabled holograms?
It's actually very straightforward. What we did is we worked with some IoT integration companies to basically understand how they structure everything. And what we didn't want to do is have to integrate our system into theirs. So we looked at the most common way or a common factor available for IoT type systems, like whether it's a SCADA system or IBM Maximo or Microsoft Dynamics, and they all had the ability to export data real time to web endpoints, secure web endpoints. So we designed our system to basically tag those. And so if you bring up a digital twin in our software of a piece of equipment, and it has these web endpoints enabled and tagged, it'll simply reach up to the Azure IoT, the data center, and if there's data there, it'll display it. Simple as that. So all you have to do from your organization point of view is identify what data you want available and then set it up as an export to a secure web endpoint, and it's done.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you so much. The last question, very interesting, and specifically to the situation that we are living in right now. How do you deploy RemoteSpark and provide training during travel restrictions, like the pandemic situation that we are living in right now?
Yeah, so if we go back roughly 10 months ago, I guess, we were doing our deployments and training in person. We would send, one or two people to a client's location when they purchase RemoteSpark and provide a 1 or 2 day training session to get them up and going. But as soon as the travel restrictions came in place, we had to quickly reassess, and we said, well, I guess we have to try to do this remotely. And we, thought hard about it and made sure that we were doing it in such a way. And we've shown that there's really no reason to travel. We are a remote worker support solution, by the way. So we're able to do the training remotely as well. So we simply ship the hardware. We help our clients install the software, and then we can go through demos and training sessions via video, much like we're doing right now. And we found it to be very effective.
Okay, thank you so much. This was our last question, and we are going to conclude today's session. I really want to thank you a lot, Rodney, for your presentation, and thanks to your company, Kognitiv Spark. Thank you to everyone who joined today's session. We will be sending a follow-up email shortly, and have a nice day. Thanks for participating.